9 are still a priority for DOT. They actually have one more that they would like to add on there. I have that information. I can forward it to you. I don't have any pavement data from DOT at this point. That's something that they're still working on helping to get, and we can provide at a later date. As I said in my email to you, my recommendation is a thing to consider is maybe we swap some projects around and make it a split, half DOT projects, half muni projects. I would recommend that we do 12 or fewer projects, because once you get past 12, it just is not realistic to say we'll get those all done in our time period for the tip. So, 6 muni, 6 DOT, or whatever split you guys would say, or even less if you want to go down to, 8 or 9 projects, for example, just because of the fiscal constraints that we have. Brad, yes.
Why are they in green again?
Green means they're new.
They're new.
Any green you see on the table, there's hard copies for people who need them. Everybody except Brad has a hard copy. Well, this has been updated since you saw that. So here's the latest version. So any of the green means new. Any of the red means it's being delayed. Any yellow is a change from what you saw last time. So I want to go through a couple of changes, as I mentioned in my email to you. One of the changes, Bernard Road Rehabilitation Project. So this is the Benson to Minnesota project. It was originally shown in 27, but after working with DOT on the schedule, it looks like 28 is really where it's going to be at. So we had to move that from 27 to 28, which means we needed to make some room in the program by moving some projects out. The 2 projects we moved out are the Potter Drive Rehabilitation, so that'll be beyond 2030 at this point, and the Academy Vanguard Drive. The only reason those projects were selected by staff is just because they matched the amount that we needed available. So there are other projects in 28. If you're like, well, maybe we want Potter Drive in and we want something else out. That's kind of what we're looking for from you all as committee members on what you would like to see. Brad.
So if it got moved from 27 to 28, what happens to 27?
I'll get to that in a minute. Any questions on the things I mentioned in this table?
Could you repeat the ones that you moved? I heard Potter, and what was the other one?
Potter Drive Rehabilitation, this one, and Academy Vanguard Drive. And again, it's just based solely on the funding amounts, not for any other reason.
And they got pushed out of this tip completely?
Yes, beyond 2030. Now, again, just because a project is pushed out to beyond 2030 doesn't mean that the project stops. If funding comes available from other project slips or carry forward funding, we could come back as a AMATS group and say, okay, we've got 15 million available. Oh, well, that's a perfect amount for Academy Vanguard. We're close enough to getting Academy Vanguard. Let's move that one into a reasonable date of when it can be actually programmed. Yes.
There's another option to just drop how much is going to one of the other projects and kind of split so that so that 2 goes slower versus, or is that not really? Because it's construction, when it happens, it goes.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend phasing projects. Ultimately, that leads to inefficiencies and
Increased costs.
Yeah, it increases the cost, and ultimately, we'll be under the gun for just that much more. Other things will get delayed.
And I'll remind you, we're already kind of doing that with Fireweed, where we're having to AC funding from 2030 into 29 because it's so expensive for us. We can't do it in 1 year alone. So we already have 28 and 29 kind of programmed. So there's not a lot of flexibility in those years. So if we do that to other projects, we're like, maybe we AC this from, we don't really have a lot of room for that. And a lot of it is based on project schedules as well.
Yeah, I mean,
what is reasonable for us? This is based on what DOT thinks right now it will take to get these projects implemented. And it's very challenging to say, okay, we want to move this up from 28 to 27 for Spenard. Well, you have right away. Right away takes, what, 2 years? If you're lucky.
Yeah.
If it takes longer, well, the project slips. So this is just based on best guess, and it's challenging to shift it around. Okay, I know there might be other questions, but I do want to get to Brad's other question. What came into the place of 27 to help fill in that gap? Fish Creek Trail Connection. Fish Creek Trail Connection is having to be slipped from 26 to 27. Now, before everybody gets upset, I'll let you know it is only a couple month slip, even though it's a fiscal year slip. So right now, I believe it's September or August of 26 that the project is anticipated to go, but it needed a little more time because addressing all the concerns raised by the stakeholders, it slipped from August to October. Well, that's only a couple of months, but that shifts it into a brand new fiscal year. So for us, we have to slip it a whole year, even though it's only a few months. I'll let you know.
Is there anything more significant that we should mention about that project? Is there a suit filed?
I don't know, DOT would have to explain that. Is there a lawsuit filed for that project?
Not for the project itself,
Okay,
but disputing some of the right. None of the right of way.
I understand there's some concerns from the Audubon Society, the birders in the area. They want to see some changes to the project and then just some other things that they're trying to tweak and finalize as part of the final design. So it's not unusual. I know it's a year, it's really a couple of months. So it's kind of fortunate for us that we had some space open up for. Yes,
So the follow-on question is what happens to 26?
we'll have to deal with that as part of amendment number 4, which will be coming along on the heels of this document.
So are there things anticipated?
Not at this point. There's not a whole lot of projects available to fill in those gaps. So we may have some carry forward funding that we'll have to deal with at a future date. Unfortunately, I don't know what those amounts are. I have nothing to go on until we get a final approval of tip amendment number 4. So I can't use that as part of this. Because I don't know what those final numbers are going to be.
And this is a new tip amendment that hasn't started yet?
It technically has, it just hasn't been before the committees yet, because we're still working on it in staff. I got the info from DOT just the other day, so I'm trying to put it together and get it ready. Hey, any questions? Those are some changes from the last version in the AMATS tables. I was going to do a brief run through of the changes in the HSIP, NHS, and table 10 if you wanted.
A question.
Yes,
So the green suggested additions,
yes.
those are like, we have the funding for it? Or not?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And yes, go ahead.
I'm curious about how funding works, or if a project is partially funded by AMATS funding, but also funded by, say, a special levy of the municipality. How could that be reflected in the TIP?
Well, we could easily do it. We basically split the funding between the different funding sources. So good example is what you have on Fish Creek. Sorry for everybody, I'm just trying to. So you have these 2 funding sources, and I understand it's hard to see on the screen. I can't do much about that. You have SDBG and we have match for SDBG. We would just add another line in here that says muni funding or whatever we want to call it, special levy or something like that. And it would subtract from how much STBG is needed. So it free up more STBG funding. The problem is we have to use reasonably foreseen funding sources to ensure that it's actually going to be there. And that's always been kind of a challenge with muni funding. Yes.
But then the other thing is that in our agreements with the municipality, when we're working through them at the beginning, we say that alternative funding sources can come into the project to pay for things that aren't, federally reimbursable and other things. And so we've done that with lots of different communities for different things that they wanted to include. There are complications because then it comes under the federal, umbrella on a project. It's not saying anything can't be done. It's just that it ends up being more expensive because it's under the same project.
Yeah, but in terms of the tip, if you're asking to help offset the costs to free up funding for other projects to move forward, we can do it. It just has to be a reasonably foreseen funding source that we can anticipate will be there in place. And a lot of it is based on historical. Have we historically gotten that funding source from the muni to help offset project costs? No, in fact, the opposite has been the case where the muni has taken projects that they were going to fund with CIP bonding and given it over to AMATS to fund fully by AMATS. Good example, Academy Vanguard Drive. No, that was one that we originally had for us. We just reduced it down in scope because it was originally Lois and 32nd, but the Muni took over Lois and we had 32nd. Yes.
I know we're on this tip table, but going back to the table 6 with the pavement
Oh, yeah.
projects. When are we going to kind of work through that? Because MOA is interested in having more projects identified. I'm really glad to see 36th Avenue was on the previous and is carried forward. We still need help on that roadway.
Yeah.
But I think Chelsea and street maintenance, we delivered 5 more projects or something.
Yeah, well, thank you for the reminder. I should have said this in the beginning.
But they're not
So-
shown here.
The data that I was given from Muni, they show 36 and 76 as a need for it. Northway was one we added because it was a full project and that one's just a test. We'll see. In terms of your question here, Melinda, that's probably what's going to need to happen at the October meetings when we bring this forward to the committees, because we can't make decisions here at a work session.
Okay.
This is just for discussion time. So if you're like,
Okay.
I want to take out these 5 projects and put in the Muni ones, that needs to be done as an actual action at a meeting.
I
But that's what we're going to try and do in October. So now is the time to be like, what do you guys think? Should we think about replacing some of the DOT ones with some Muni needs as well? What does that look like for everybody? Is it a half-half? Is it a 80-20 split?
So that table is developed with input from the city public works from maintenance group.
Yes, from both DOT and Muni maintenance groups. Yes.
Is it fiscally like approximated or like, how do we know that all of those can be delivered or funds for them, or like, how does that funding piece work?
It's our best guess. It's not really fiscal in the sense of, okay, we know that each project is gonna cost us 5 million. We have a rough guess of how much it's gonna cost. We use that to determine design starts, any additional design hits, and then final construction. We're like, okay, we're within a reasonable thing here. That's why we're saying not to really go above 12, because then you're starting to get outside of the program. It's just not reasonable with how many of these are not fully started at this point to assume that you're gonna have more than 12. Like, for example, the last tip had a ton of them, but that's because a number of them had been started already and we were just doing the construction piece of it in detail. So we were able to get through a lot of them. This one, I think less of them are fully started at this point.
So do we have any idea when we'll see feedback from DOT maintenance and Muni M&O about these projects?
I already sent you the Muni M&O one in the email I sent
Oh,
out.
this one, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, so
and then DOT, I just got an email today. I don't know when we'll be able to do that. It may be something that I have to work with James and get something to you. So I want to provide it by the October meeting so you can have that data to make the assessment of what are the priorities.
Right.
And then these tables don't include the STIP funded.
Nope.
pavement preservation.
This is just, thank you for the reminder. This is just AMATS funding for pavement projects, both roadway and non-motorized. Daniel?
Pavement replacement is just like pave and shave. Are there any like sidewalks or any other things? Like what kind of scope are we talking about here?
Well, that's kind of what we talked about last time, is really needing something from the policy committee, maybe a policy itself or some kind of guidelines, because what's been happening is projects get started. And then when we get out there, we're like, oh, there's more that the community wants. A good example is INL. INL started as a pavement project from here, but then when we got out there, there's like, we might as well get a bunch more done while we're at it. But then that blew up the scope, that blew up the cost, and now kind of impacting the fiscal programs. So we would need direction from the policy committee with recommendations from the TAC. Do we limit it as to just shave and pave? Do we include sidewalks in there? I think DOT will have to speak about if sidewalks are possible for us to include in the pavement program. I know curb ramps are, but sidewalks get to be a little more challenging. I understand. Maybe Sean Baskey can speak on it.
So
resurfacing them is absolutely within the realm of possibility. So then the question is whether or not you can fill the holes in between, you know, and your gaps, right? And add in sidewalks and pathways within a pavement preservation under our existing agreement with the federal government. You know, I'll just admit that there's people with different reads on it, and we don't have the clear definition from FHWA.
I think the Minnesota project that we just brought back to you all is a good example of kind of where we're at. If you want to add in like new signals or kind of redo the system above and beyond what is existing, then it becomes a higher level project above shape and pave. Yeah, above what you traditionally do in this table.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is, so thinking about a couple of things, thinking about uni projects versus DOT projects, like if we were to skew more to DOT facilities, is there potential for safety upgrades to be wrapped into this? That's one question that I have. And then the other question, just looking at the list here, it does skew pretty south Anchorage. I'm not seeing like a whole, I mean, I see there's like Gamble and Ingra, there's A Street, which is Midtown-ish. Muldoon. But yeah, it looks like the majority of them are all in South Anchorage. So I just kind of find that interesting. I'm wondering how we're prioritizing different areas of town.
Is your cutoff or something?
I cut off for South Anchorage. Where would you cut off?
I
Here,
mean,
you.
I run right up to Abbott. I mean, Midtown technically runs right up to Abbott.
Is this funded? So these are AMATS funded. So is that statewide block grant funding, or is that, because that's not pavement? So we're DOT projects. When we're repaving a road in town, we're pavement preservation, a lot of money. So we have restrictions there. I don't know that we would have the same restrictions if we were using statewide block.
Agreed, but if it's categorized as a pavement preservation, then does it go out of our pre-construction manual, which is approved by FHWA and limited to that? We're going through a rewrite of that, which is hopefully going to open up more possibilities, but until that gets approved by FHWA.
A lot of it's tied to the funding source.
Yeah.
So we use STBG, DOT uses NHPP and STBG for their pavement. So it's similar. So if you guys have limitations on your pavement, it would go the same for us, that we would have limitations on our funding as well for pavement preservation designated projects.
And that's the key, is that pavement preservation designated is the question. STBG can be used for just about anything, right?
Yep.
NHPP can as well, since it's on the highway system, right?
Which is why we've been pulling projects out of pavement designated projects and calling them as separate individual ones when the scope gets so large and the cost gets so large. But we're kind of running into the problem where we're not really getting a lot of stuff repaved quickly enough because we're ballooning the scopes. You mentioned safety. Can DOT speak, can safety work be done as part of pavement preservation? And if so, what are the constraints on that?
So again, there's disagreements within staff, at the staff level, you know. But under the current pre-construction manual, section 1140, I don't know, it might have been like 5 years ago, they went through a rewrite and pulled out safety for the word safety.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get that rewritten back in, and that would open the door, but that rewrite is ongoing. I think we've had 3 meetings on it in the last 2 months.
Okay.
And so that would open the door for some of those things, even under the current pre-construction manual. Some of us read that we can still do safety.
So these projects were selected. I'll remind everybody, most of them are carryovers from the previous tip because they weren't done. And they were selected at that time as based on the pavement needs and also where the expected pavement needs are. So it's based on data. And the data is showing that these are kind of the areas that they have needs for the DOT projects.
a question about that data. Does that data include the average daily trips? Because I'm just looking at the Northway Drive.
Well, that's not a DOT one. That's a muni one, and that's a new one that we're adding in. The reason that one's on there is because it was actually one of the projects on the top list to get funded as a full-on project. And it was asking for protected bike lanes, and a bunch of other things. And, there's about 600 people who use that road on the ADT. So staff was like, well, maybe we don't need to do a full expensive protected bike lane project. Maybe we can go out there and redo the pavement, and while we're redoing it, we can stripe it differently. Not move the curb and gutter, not do anything else like that, just redo the surface and repaint it.
It was the top of what list?
Sorry, but it was on the top list from the MTP of projects to get started next. And I sent that out last work session as well. Yes,
So that helps answer my question because I've been looking at 36th Avenue and wondering if we could do lane reallocation on that one as well. So it sounds like in this category, it could be contemplated.
that is still up for debate, and I believe DOT will have to answer that on their end. But as long as you're not moving like the curb and gutter, it's probably more possible to be able to do that.
Okay.
As flimsy and flexible.
Wow.
Because it was brought up as an HSIP.
Correct.
We've heard from the community that there's interest of looking at lane drops, so.
And that's because of the funding, or because it's designated as a pavement preservation?
The pavement preservation designation. If it were a separate project on its own in like the complete streets table and funded with STBG, just like everything else, we could put whatever we wanted in the description as long as it was federally allowed.
In the email that you sent us, it listed ratings
Mhm.
for the mini ones. Is that rating information something that you'll get from the state for theirs? And is it a similar rating so you can see different rating?
I don't know. That's part of what we still have to do and get that info from DOT.
Is the rating system that we use
It's from
based
DOT.
Should be
on,
the same, GASB.
and does that assessment include all the streets in Anchorage, or do they just drive ours when they get back? Yes,
For us, we pay for all of our paved roadways,
and
but not DOT.
Not DOT.
DOT's.
so DOT might do this,
Separate.
they might have the same, but they might not. Okay.
Here, and then you had your hand up.
Yeah, so two of those, of the projects that came back from the Muni, I see on the list here, and then there's three that I don't see. So was that intended to be an addition, like the Muni saying, actually, these three projects, the C, D, and E from the email,
Mhm.
they would like to potentially replace or add to this list? Is that what I'm gathering here?
Yeah, so I reached out to the Muni to ask them what is their top 5 or 6 projects that they would like to see for pavement to try and provide that data to you based on your comment last work session.
Great.
So how it can work now is, yes, they can be added to this list, or they can replace projects already on this list. I recommend you don't add too many more projects to this list because it's not going to be fundable. So I would recommend the committees have an honest discussion about if they should replace some of these projects on this list with some of the muni ones.
Do we happen to have similar scoring for the other projects that are, the other Muni projects that are on this list? Or are the remainder of these projects DOT projects?
The remainder are DOT. So
Gotcha.
36, 76, and Northway are muni, the rest are DOT. And Old Seward Highway Spur is underway right now, so I would recommend keeping that one on the list. And any of the other ones we have underway, I would recommend keeping on the list where possible. James can help me with that info. James, you have your hand up.
Yeah, does this tip have programming for any new starts from either one of these?
Yes, so we do have, so we are on the Complete Streets table, and you'll see this thing that says Motorized Pavement Replacement Program. You can barely see it on the screen.
Already
So-
12.
Yeah, in 2027, there's 5 million, and I believe that is for the Old Seward Spur project, constructed. And then we don't have any available funding again until 28 or 29 and 30. You can see there's 2.1 million and 1.2 million. That's enough to go ahead and get a few projects started off of the list. What is the design start, like 500,000 to 500,000, 500 to 750,000 to get a pavement project started. So you can see we have enough money to get, 4 or 5 projects started on that list.
In 29 and 30.
And 29 and 30, and that's for roadway pavement. If you go over to the active transportation list, you'll see another similar one, active transportation pavement replacement. There are 2 hits in there, one in 27 and one in 29 for about 1.6 and 1.2 million. So those are also project starts.
And what are, those are new projects?
Yes,
Okay.
new project starts.
And we don't know what those are yet.
It's any of those projects that are on the list.
Copy. Do we have anything on that list that is in progress?
No.
No.
I think the one that was noted by Parks and Rec that they would like to get started right away is the Sitka Street Park pathway, Orca Street to Lake Otis. The big one with that is the condition of the bridge right now prohibits them from taking their maintenance vehicles across the bridge because of its poor condition. So they'd like to redo that whole thing and get it up to current needs so they can actually keep it paved. I'm still waiting for some additional information for the Ship Creek Trail, the termini for that, so we can fill that in and get that info to you guys at the meeting. Everything here, say except maybe international, was Muni Parks and Rec recommended.
Which,
Everything from 2 onward. I think airport was a DOT recommended one from the previous tip. I forget who recommended it.
So that's just going and replacing what's there.
What do you mean?
It's not.
Oh, yeah. It's sorry. I was like, huh? Yeah, these projects are just replacing what's there.
So International Airport has a pathway all the way from Northwood to Homer?
I think there's shoulder or something pathway on there.
I mean, if it does, it's in horrible shape. That's like a terrible, yeah.
It separates from the road.
I think so.
It's off, yeah.
Some of the
it-
section, but like through from Old Seward Highway to C Street.
This is Northwood to Homer.
Yeah, Northwood's west of Minnesota.
And Homer is by the Seward Highway.
Yeah, there's like a pathway along the
So
whole thing.
Well,
Old
it-
Seward to C Street.
It pathway sidewalk is probably,
Is there even a sidewalk?
Yes, there is pathway and sidewalk along that whole thing.
Okay, maybe just one side of the street.
Well, on the north side is the pathway, the south side, the north side is pathway and sidewalk in places. Some of it is pathway, some of it is sidewalk. And then on the south side, it is sidewalk. It's in horrible condition.
Does this exist on a map anywhere? Is there a map of all of these projects?
No, but we can probably create something like that.
I mean, at least for me, I think it would be very, very helpful to visualize where all of these projects are located and even like co-located with things that are on the CIP. It would be interesting to actually look a little more comprehensively at like, geographically, where are we making investments and where are we considering investments? Because some of this starts to feel like it's getting a little discrete and hard to visualize as a whole, as a unified whole.
I'll see if I can get the projects themselves on a map, but in terms of, I don't know about the CIP.
Oh, I wouldn't ask you to do that.
Well,
That might be a me project.
Yes, Sean.
just maybe some general observations. So, and some history too. So Upper DeArmond, I feel like we tried to start that one because the municipality wanted us to pay, I think that's a muni road. And then we couldn't find a local match for that because it's not in.
Outside of, I thought it was in a.
Is that Alersa?
Yeah, but without, it's outside of ARTSA for sure, and then other issues. And so unless we can solve the local match side of it, I don't know how that project moves forward. And then I've got some other ones, but if you-
CASA may be a mechanism, I'm not sure. Chugach area state access roads. I'm not sure how far away from the park is it justifiable, but just something to, a potential idea.
Ant Canyon Road, in the first round of the CASA bond, was the project that ultimately moved forward. Off the top of my head, I want to say like it's either 3.5 or $4.5 million. And so that's like that really bumpy part as you're going up to backside of Flat Top or Sunnyside.
Yes.
But then that was put on pause because I think the state is putting a parking lot in or.
DNR maybe.
We're actually moving forward. We have consultants with a contract that are getting executed as we speak. So it's from Upper Dearman to, it's gonna support Sunnyside at some point. The consultant will look at the corridor.
I don't know what will happen during the bond process, but if I was reading the tea leaves, I would just say, I think the majority of the assembly is kind of approaching CASA with some skepticism,
Okay.
just because it is in a sense, ARTSA subsidizing Millers's. And want to make sure that those projects that they're essentially being put forward in time because that's being used as a funding mechanism that they have. They undergo scrutiny. There was the one project in this last cycle that Karen Braga had brought forward, and then the administration was like, no, we haven't really, like these advocates, the community want to see this happen, but we haven't really vetted it. And so we amended it down just to the design portion instead of design and construction.
The Basher.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just don't think a whole bunch of projects are gonna make the cut this time around. We're still also,
For CASA.
yeah.
Okay.
And some of the other, considerations of like, okay, how do we get ARTSA people at the table for those conversations? So it's not just the LURSAs who are deciding, yeah, these are the projects that we're chill with. How do we get more of an advisory board? I think Kent is working on that. So anyway, I guess I just wouldn't put all my eggs in the basket of CASA heads.
Okay.
Just kind of circle around to something you mentioned, Aaron responded to.
That's what,
There is a real difference between a shave and pave project for pavement replacement and one that really stretches the bounds that goes into as much as you can through a pavement preservation. And we're seeing that, in terms of cost and timeline, they're very different.
Sure.
And as a programming tool, having some guidance from the policy committee on what they want to see or how to determine how far to take a pavement preservation project would be extremely helpful. Because a shave and pave takes 4 years,
yeah,
4 years to turn around.
I mean, no,
In
not recently.
a perfect world, perfect world. But once you get into sidewalks or light poles, signals, you're now going
road diets,
Road
lake
diets.
cross,
6-7 years. And so the question is, do you want to fix asphalt quickly? Or do you want to upgrade the facility as much as possible through a pavement preservation project? And that determination early on matters significantly when programming the TIP. So anything that the policy committee could do to help guide staff and the DOT liaison would be greatly appreciated.
Brad, so like as I look through these different ones, like Brayton Drive, Dearman to O'Malley, there are a lot of people that walk along that road. Could it drop from 2 lanes to 1 lane and have a pathway on it so that people could walk? That'd be something that I think could, I know that the community councils have requested something along that line. now's probably the time to have that discussion so that either it stays a pavement preservation as is, or it moves into something else that has a different concept. As it like at Elmore Road, Huffman to O'Malley, it's basically just a road, it doesn't have any pathway. Does it get a pathway? I can see tons of challenges with that. Maybe not, right? Doesn't even need to get repaved. Pavement's really not in that bad a shape. Upper Huffman, I mean, so if we went through each of these, knew what the pavement conditions were, and could kind of get a sense of what projects might be beneficial to have on it, then we can't turn all of these into projects successfully. But at the same time, there's few of these that would be great to not advance as a pavement replacement and have it taken off because of significant interest to do something.
Yeah, I think I would like to be able to compare apples to apples as with regard to pavement replacement, and so having some kind of similar scoring for these projects would be really helpful. Otherwise, it feels a little bit like just throwing darts. And I think also makes it a little difficult to prioritize.
But James, if I were to channel Paul Van Lanningham, I have heard him express that, wow, these roads are falling apart. I know we want all these facilities, but on some of the roads, we may have to catch it on the next round because we need to get on these roads and fix them. They're falling apart. Better words, but
Yeah, and so that's
In a way.
kind of where I'm
on
getting
the
at
maintenance
is
side.
you can either have a pavement preservation project that is moving expediently as possible, or you can have a pavement preservation project that captures as many upgrades as possible. And I think it would be wise for the policy committee to give some direction as to what they would like to prioritize in those two tranches.
Does the DOT have GASB condition data for all of these?
I think they do a different systems. And
We've got,
Different system.
we've got
Like
ride
Yeah.
and cracking data for every paved road.
So I don't know if it's an apples to apples comparison between the two. I'm gonna have to investigate that a little bit more to get you there.
Okay.
Graham, your hand is up.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess not to put the request back to staff, but I'd actually appreciate the TAC's investigation, maybe even a staff investigation of how resurfacing projects can achieve our safety goals without increasing cost or timelines. I mean, like, just as a non-designer, like, we're repainting the striping no matter what. Can we use striping to achieve safety goals? And also maintenance, like long-term maintenance too. Like, how can we build it back, not just so that the physical structure lasts longer, but also so that it makes snow removal easier, reduces, the size of the facility in terms of what we have to maintain. I don't think my goal as a policy committee member is for us to have like deluxe sidewalks and bike lanes on every single road, because that's going to be hard to maintain. I think we need to be thinking creatively about how we're using these projects, though, to reduce our maintenance burden while improving safety. And I'd like to get some technical input from staff on that question before the PAC weighs in, or PC weighs in.
I guess that would still be up to DOT of whether or not pavement projects can address safety or not.
Read it. Pardon me, the way I read it, I find it a little bit vague, maybe it's the right word, but I mean, safety screening and safety improvements are section 1140 of the pre-construction.
Which is why there's a disagreement among staff on whether or not you can or can't. The question is to FHWA with vague answers back, understandably, because it's not super clear, which is why we're rewriting.
So maybe we're waiting for the rewriting to happen.
But there's no guarantee that FHWA will
Agree with it.
will agree with, our new rewrite, which is much more much more precise and much more flexible. But then back to the question that he just, both of you guys have just asked is direction, right? Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And it does take an exorbitant amount of time to do a project that's not just a straight shave and pave. From public involvement to, whether or not, if you're doing like a big lane drop, should you go through the CSS process? Right now, we call it a maintenance project. And so it is dropped from a requirement to do the CSS process with our agreement with the municipality. But is that the intent of that kind of project, right? We might have to revisit those kinds of things.
So let's say that the road capacity, even with the lane drop, you do some capacity analysis and it's like has so much extra capacity that no one would really even notice. In that sort of situation, could there be like thresholds of this no longer needs to go through CSS process?
Yes.
Did you have a road?
Diamond at 7 lanes.
Just remember, any DOT facility is gonna have to go through the new directive.
Could the new directive be modified to say that if it is so over capacity versus the volumes that it doesn't need screening, it can go for, just theoretical here, right? So, it's great if it's a road that's heavily used and is on the threshold of congestion, being able to say, hey, pause, slow down, let's not like go too fast. But if there's roads that have such abundance of capacity that it becomes a speeding issue, a safety issue, a maintenance issue, that it's just so excessively big. And there be, instead of 2 pots of yes, you can do it, no, you can't, there's 3 of yes, you can do it with minimal like delays, kind of on a pavement preservation, let's just do it. Ones that are, hey, you have to analyze this, you have to go through the regular process, and maybe you can, or maybe through the process you realize that you shouldn't. Right. So 3 pots instead of just 2. Anyway.
But if we're looking at this pavement preservation list, most of these projects on DOT roads are on roads that are not national highway system roads. Most of the roads that you're talking about are NHS roads. And there's a reason why DOT is nominating stuff that is not on the NHS, because NHS is most of our funding. So that's where most of our projects are, right? FHWA or, the federal legislators have directed FHWA to use most of their funding on national highway system roads. So now we have limited funding because almost all of our projects are funded through FHWA. We have limited funding that's STBG, which is flexible to do on any roadway. So there's a reason why you see STBG eligible roads, because all AMATS funding is STBG. So if you're going to do something on Diamond,
It's not.
yes, we could have AMATS funded, but right now I've got $20 million worth of failed storm drain system underneath the pavement on Diamond, where there's just holes in the storm drain system.
It would be on another list. Let me go to that list and show you, which is not actually a list, it's just an item. That would be on the NHS table with AMATS area NHS pavement and bridge preservation.
We're using NHPP funding or NHS funding
Yep.
for that action.
These are tables that we have not actually looked at yet. Okay.
No, we've been pretty focused on the pavement preservation. So I'm going to ask us that we kind of move on. I know there's a lot of desire to have this discussion, but just remind you, please take a look at the pavement preservation in table 6. Take a look at the data that I provided you in the previous email. Chelsea did put an awesome link in there about the Muni projects can be found at that link. So I will send that out to the committee members as well. Thank you, Chelsea, for that. So you can kind of look at it and see if there's more discussion you want to have at the TAC and PC meeting on this. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next tables. HSIP,
Aaron, before we get to the.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry to drag us back to the previous table, but can we fill me in on the Hyder Street project and the timing on that? We probably talked about this in the meeting, so this is something I can maybe take on later as well.
well, there was some discussion about this project in general, whether it is something that AMAT should fund at all. Or if it should be maybe muni funded. Because if AMAT's funding, then it comes with all these strings attached of all of our other funding with FHWA. So what you see in here is staff's kind of best guess at when it can get started. 2027, put some money towards the design. 2029, put some more money towards the design. And then have construction later past 2030 on this project.
Yeah, I'm assuming this obviously takes into account the PL and timing of the completion of that.
Yeah, the PL should be done by in enough time for us to have this. And one of the big things about the PL is all the alternatives that are looked at the PL, the Greenway for Hyder is consistent with all of them. So it wasn't something that's like, okay, as long as you only do this alternative, the Hyder works. That's why staff felt comfortable with recommending this. So we can be like, there's something in this plan, let's move forward with it when it gets done. But cost increases, timeline increases, everything else when you put it in the AMATS program.
And the PEL, the location of that Greenway is based on community feedback about their desire to have a Greenway in that location, but the PEL itself is not studying the viability or the best option for a Greenway in that area, correct? It's just.
Yeah, I don't think the PEL looked at other roads that could be a Greenway, and I think they heard from the community that the Hyder one, mostly because that's what it was in the MTP as. The MTP currently shows it. I will let you know that there's a little bit of a difference in the termini. So the PEL has the Hyder Greenway going to 3rd Avenue, I believe, to connect with the trail. The MTP stops at 5th. A lot of that is because once you get past 5th, there's a big building in the way. If you wanted to continue moving forward, that would have to be dealt with and some more complications. I will let you know, one of the challenges with the project that you see in front of you for this is, what do you do at 15th and 5th? If people want to go north and south, how do you get them across that road? They're not going to be new traffic signals put in those locations. So you're kind of just dumping people on at 15th and 5th and say, use what's there. Good luck.
Yeah.
Well, really 6th, because 6th
my
is.
exact question.
So part of the conversation that staff had is, I wonder if there's an opportunity, if it stays in the AMATS program, whatever you guys decide. I wonder if there's an opportunity that maybe 15th to 9th, because 9th is a good east-west connection that already has crossings at Ingra Gamble that can get people in and out of the area a little bit easier. I think one of the concerns raised at the last work session is this is pretty isolated in the middle of 2 big, large roads. And if it's not done right, it could be a disaster for any future runoff projects. And so I think it was just wanting the committees to have more discussion about this project, and is this the right starting point?
Yeah, so I did hear that there was some robust conversation about this at the previous work session, which I also was not at. So I don't necessarily need to rehash all of that, but I will just speaking, I'd be curious to know a little bit more about what strings would be potentially attached. But in terms of the project itself, I'll speak in really strong support of it. Not only has the Greenway been advocated for by residents of Fairview and others who participated in the Pell process, but also as part of the Reconnecting Fairview project. You may recall that myself and other elected officials, including our federal delegation, worked really hard to help support Fairview in their quest to get that Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program grant. They did in those efforts, and then finally they received the money, and so those efforts are well underway. Yeah, this is something that the community really desires. It's a neighborhood where there's a high percentage of folks who don't own a vehicle. They really rely on that non-motorized connectivity. But also the vision of Fairview is that this is a greenway kind of connecting the entire urban core. It doesn't just serve that neighborhood. But in terms of the termini, they've talked a lot about, okay, well, then you could meet up with the park strip right there on 9th, come down Coastal Trail, Chester Creek Trail back up. So you're really creating this greenway loop. So yeah, I think it's a project that has a lot of potential and also I think is important in terms of righting some historic injustices in that neighborhood, really empowering Fairview to envision its own future.
So Daniel, maybe I'll take my questions because I don't doubt or even have any objection to any of the larger idea of that, but I'm just, my thought is that maybe that particular corridor is maybe not exactly the right location for it. Maybe it could move a little bit. So I will take my questions to the reconnecting group. Group and just ask them further.
And
Thank you.
to be clear, this is $2 million for design funding. And so future funding for construction is TBD.
Yeah, it's in the outer years, but when we put it in here, we expect fully that the funding will be available when it is needed. And, because maybe delayed to like we're seeing the budgets. And I want to mention some of the strings I was talking about. It has to follow the federal process. It also has to go through the DOT process. So as we're seeing on every project, it's right now, everything does go through DOT. So just keep that in mind. Right.
Yeah, so I'm really interested what the PEL says and also what the reconnecting community analysis says for the Hyder Street Greenway. I see the biggest cost, biggest challenge pieces being how it connects north and south. Does it become a regional connection? Or, typically a Woonarf is not intended as a cut, a regional connection. Usually Woonarf is kind of like end of a connection point or like community focused, not like regional trail connection piece. So there's part of me that looks at it on here and says it's premature to have this currently funded in this way. I think we could use, I think we could use some bond funds to go and do a pilot Woonarf and not even need to have it on this. It would just be a matter of let's prioritize that and let's do it. And that doesn't accomplish a greenway that connects trails, but Carlick Street as the greenway right now already kind of does that in a way that I find super satisfying and good as a cyclist. So there's part of me that's like, this is premature. I see where this is going. If maybe it's constructed with Ingrid Gamble, whatever happens from the Pell for those streets, so that it's like mixed in and kind of part of it, and the parallel non-motorized for those. I have more appetite for seeing it's like included and that sort of thing than have it be a standalone on here with no connection points and that piece not figured out.
Yeah, I know. I hear all of it just from my technical perspective. Remember, it went through the MTP process for the public. It was scored and ranked as the Hyder Greenway. So if there's a desire to change it from that, we would have to go back through and change it in the MTP, which we're going to have an MTP amendment here along with this. So if you happen to want that, let me know and we'll see what we get. But staff was just pulling what was in the MTP, supported by the Pell at this point, even if it's a draft version. But we can't wait for everything to be done. Sometimes we have to preempt it and see how it goes. And then we can always make changes later.
We can always bring forward an amendment, say the Pell doesn't support the Reconnecting Communities project, says, never mind, it is Carlick or it is another parallel street. We can bring forward an amendment to the TIP. But I appreciate having it in here.
I think it's a good discussion for us to have because it is something the community's been asking, something in that area. So I'm glad we're having this discussion. So thank you all. I hope nobody feels offended by any of the discussion. I think it's an important part of the process. Okay. Any other questions about the first 6 tables? Okay, well, I'm going to get into a little area, unfortunately, that I don't have a lot of info for you all on. So DOT may have to be on the spot on some of this. So I hope you guys are ready. So I was provided info for the HSIP, NHS, and Table 10 tables. So HSIP table, basically what happened with this one is updated the information based on the available funding that they have right now. They have not gotten the 26 funding program in place. So that's why you're not seeing any new projects or really any substantial changes to the HSIP table. We're unfortunately out of sync with how the process goes. So they need a few more, I think another month or so or longer. James, I'm kind of looking at you, but it could be longer to get the 26 funding program in place. And that's all done by headquarters at DOT. So this is what we have right now. It's pretty common. Just want to let you know, it's not out of the ordinary for us to have as much as we have and then have to come through with an amendment at a later date once we get the updated information. So, you know, we're just now starting FY26. So we are not behind. We're not delaying any projects by not having it updated with the newest information. We can always do that as part of a future amendment. So, the projects that you see before you are all of the ones that are in the current TIP, with the ones that have no anticipated funding in the 27 through 30 time period removed. So, you know, some of the ones you've seen before, flashing yellow arrows, Northern Lights Road Diet, Inger Gamble Road Diet, Safety Corridor Variable Speed Limit, Mountain View Drive improvements, and the A Street Road Diet. You may notice that you don't see any of the recent ones that AMATS nominated on there. They were recommended for approval, but we're still waiting for the funding program to be finalized. Any questions on HSIP? Yes, Melinda.
Just as far as being able to utilize the flashing yellow arrow, is that something that I can also incorporate into a different ongoing PM&E project separately and tap into this funding, or does it have to just be specifically HSIP?
These are specifically designated locations that have, I believe, already been selected as part of it. And that's part of the HSIP process. So this is not a chunk of money that you can be like, okay, I'd like to put a few here and there.
I'm always looking. All right, thanks.
Is my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong, DOT.
Okay,
That's correct.
all right, thank you.
Okay.
Could the locations that you're thinking of be added as a separate HSIP project and funded would be another question.
Probably, that would be something that we'd have to, I don't know if Anna Boson is on, but I'm assuming it would have to follow the same process of get nominated, go through the scoring and ranking and be added to the program like everything else. So that might be something to keep in mind for the next funding call for nominations for 27.
So if there's a project that you envision doing in 10 years, maybe now you get it to 50 so that it's funded and ready for, you know, but if it's one you're going to be doing soon, you probably don't want to delay your project, just signal that. Okay.
The future policy committee says, we don't need that one. Joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we never know what a future policy committee is gonna do. We're doing our best now, so. Okay, any other questions? If you do end up having questions about HSIP or need somebody to come talk about a specific project, obviously let me know and I can reach out to DOT to get somebody at the TACTC meeting.
So I think I do. I think my question is simply, with these projects active, when would we potentially see some of the new nominations on this list?
Well, once the funding program for 26 is approved, then it would be available and it could come back. The timing kind of really sucks for this because any new projects that we add to the TIP have to be part of the interagency consultation process. We also heard from FHWA their expectation for public comments that are done as part of amendments, that if you make changes, there's an amendment level threshold based on the feedback. You have to put the amendment back out for another public comment period. Say, for example, we approve this document as is to put it out for the public. We go through our public comment period. We get updated info on the HSIP projects and we want to go ahead and add them to the TIP. Well, after that public comment period is done, we have to then put that amendment back out for public comment because their new project is being added to the TIP.
The timeline for.
So the timeline right now is to bring it to you all for review and release for public comment in October. Then staff will work with air quality group to do the air quality demonstration in November and the interagency consultation in November, December, and get everything ready to post for public comment period in January, February. Then in March, it'll come back for final approval.
But if
So-
it's major amendments that.
We'll have to put it back out for another 30 days or so of public comment. If we put it back out, we don't have any obligation to have to re-go through the public hearing at the assembly, so we'll have to figure out how to involve the assembly member. The assembly is part of that process if we put it back out. So if we do have to do that, it'll delay us till April or later approval, April, May. And then it has to go through the DOT process to get incorporated into the state.
So if the DOT, just like these projects are ready before we see it in October, then we're good, but if not, then
I think the plan is to get it in October, so when you guys see this in October, we'll hopefully have the updated HSIP list.
Policy.
Probably, I don't think it'll be ready for
I
the
think we'll
TAC.
have it for TAC, set the TAC agenda a week from today.
Yeah.
We will not have it for that. We may be able to have the final fiscal plan by the 9th. For posting.
and the HSIP funding is its own funding source, so it's not like having to choose or move around. It already comes with the funding, right? It's just that it can show because it's a correct project.
And just remember, this is for 27 onward, so if probably not really gonna be that important for this, it's more important for the amendment that we're gonna have, which is what is coming in December for you guys to look at. So we have a little bit of time. We're hoping to get the new list. We're gonna update that, and then we'll have to update this based on the new projects that are added. So our time's a little wonky, unfortunately, but we're trying to make it work.
So that new list, some of it might come to this 27 to 30, and some of it might go to the 26.
So any new projects that are added to the tip for 26 funding and are expected to receive funding in 27 through 30 have to be on this list. So if we add anything new to the amendment it'll have to be added to this as well.
Okay.
Which is why things are a little unique right now.
Remember how many nominations we had? This upcoming round?
For like central region wide.
Or no, for Anchorage.
Oh,
Wait, no.
we
Just the
had-
new ones, or was there something else?
it was Tudor. It was Tudor McInnes, Tudor and Wright, and Tudor and Dale.
It's three.
Just the three, because those are the ones we got. And my understanding is the Tudor and Dale and Tudor Wright were recommended for funding. Tudor and McInnes was not this go round, but it'll be looked at for next go round. So we're just waiting to hear that and any other projects that DOT recommended.
So then those would be new starts for 26. So you would see in Amendment 4, those two going in as new starts, but with that project, there is a timeline and funding for right-of-way utilities construction, which would end up being on this table.
So we might show this table first with those later before we actually get to the floor with 26.
We're in an awkward situation because of how long it takes for a new tip cycle to go. We have to kind of preempt some of this stuff and then catch up once we get the info.
So what the process probably look like is that if these projects are included in the HSIP funding program for 26, we'll add that information through Amendment 4 to the 23-26 tip. And then Amendment 1 of this tip would include the out year funding.
Nice and confusing.
So it wouldn't show up by October. We probably shouldn't plan on it.
It depends on where we're at, honestly, but I wouldn't anticipate it at this point.
But again, not entirely necessary because this is
27. So we have over a year to make it, to add the projects in.
We'll have time to do an amendment.
So do we still believe that this project phasing is accurate based on the DOT's policy, new policy on allocations? I mean, that's 1, 2, 3 and a half. You count Mountain View Drive, although I'm not sure that that is a NHS situation, so maybe irrelevant, but yeah, are we still confident that these are all 2027 utilities and construction project phase?
I mean, I would say DOT is never certain about any dates. But that aside, we've started the actions to do the analysis. The Northern Region and statewide group got their contract out to RFP. They've got it selected and an intent to negotiate with somebody, already negotiating with that company. So, we should have answers relatively soon on those projects as far as their viability.
And what happens from, what happens from an HSIP perspective or a TIP perspective even, if there are substantial changes to these projects as a result of DOT's analysis, then what happens?
I guess it depends on what those changes are. If those, anything at an amendment level threshold, we would have to change it via an amendment. So if it's a cost increase of 50% or greater of the total project cost, adding or deleting the project. Maybe what happens is they do the lane analysis and determine these projects can't move forward. In that case, these projects go away. So we would have to update the TIP to reflect that. It's all based on what we receive from DOT about what's happening with these projects.
Or there are other options other than pure lane drops for other mitigating things on some of those roadways. There might be some opportunities there.
So, yeah, with HSP, you got to be careful because you nominate it specifically for a certain thing. You have to make sure that you're within that realm of what you nominated it for.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that these all say road diet, road diet, road diet, would lead me to believe that if it wasn't actually a road diet, then there would be ramifications for the TIP.
I mean, I wouldn't say ramifications for the TIP. It would be the projects themselves would call into question whether they still move forward or not, which then we would have to address at the TIP. But it wouldn't negatively impact us in terms of like, we couldn't get other projects funded because of that. It's just about these particular projects. And if they don't move forward, then that funding will go to other projects that have been nominated and have needs, whether they're in Anchorage or not.
But they would have to be HSIP projects.
Yes. HSIP nominated somewhere in the state. Yes.
Somewhere in the state. Anywhere.
Yes.
HSIP is not specifically.
It has to be based on safety needs.
Right, yeah.
And it's not just on DOT roads. We've got lots of HSIP projects on city roads and on city of Wasilla roads, community roads, all over.
So I do want to be really clear about this. So if DOT were to come back on any one of these three and say, as a result of our analysis, we believe that this road diet is inappropriate, that effectively scuttles the entire project because there would no longer be a road diet.
I think so. I guess I would have to ask anyone who's an HSIP expert on what the ramifications are if they come in and say, okay, we can't do a road diet, but we can do some signal modifications instead. Is that such a sweeping change that it's no longer covered under the nomination that was part of the HSIP program? I don't know what kind of flexibility they have in that regard.
I would
So I'd have to
be very interested to know that.
I mean, it looks like Northern Lights, for example. It has road diet, it has sidewalks, it has consolidated driveways, it has crosswalk, leading pedestrian intervals. So I would suspect that you could deal with those things because they're still identified, even if you didn't do the road diet. So
I think I would just like to have confirmation that that's true before we assume that it is. I mean, 'cause that's what those are really significant public ramifications if that in fact becomes the case. So I would just like to know for sure what happens.
Okay, I can ask Anna Boson with DOT and or whoever else she can send it to give some more explanation of kind of what is the flexibility built into these HSIP projects and what can be done.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay,
one question I do have on it too is if through the process of, anytime you put a policy out or a directive, and then start to look at it and analyze it, you might be like, we missed the boat on it. Is the engineer's directive one that if you're doing the analysis and realize, hey, it would actually be better if we revise it in this way? Is that a fairly easy, you could have the engineer make some revisions to that directive so that it is actually accomplishing the purpose that it was intended versus unintended consequences?
I don't think anybody in this room can speak for the chief engineer.
What's the process of revising the engineer's directive?
It would be a revision to the chief engineer's directive by the chief engineer.
So it wouldn't have to go through a long process. They could, and
I don't think that there was a long process. Yes, and so I would suspect that there's not a long process.
Okay, I just want to be mindful of time since I think some people have to go to the pre-agenda work. Any other questions on HSIP that I should reach out to DOT or anybody else? Linda.
Very minor question, but on the responsible agency column, I understand the HSIP is DOT. But I did flag a couple on the complete streets table 2 that shows MOA as a responsible agency. Is that true or is that the DOT? So the 2 projects, 15th Avenue rehab and then Denali Street, I'm aware that there are MOA's jurisdiction of the roadway, but
which table?
table 2 on the green columns there, that's the MOA.
Yeah, the 2 new ones we added. We can do DOT or MOA. Doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter.
Nope. We can do DOT/MOA if you want.
Okay.
I think the idea here is,
No,
well, I think the
MOA.
idea here is if the muni wants to maybe take on responsibility for designing and implementing these projects, it might be an opportunity to look at that for those.
well, I'm interested in having
Change it right now.
ability.
Yeah, if you,
It's the same.
if you guys, it's the committee members aren't happy with this saying MOA and want it to say DOT, we can go ahead and change that as staff, so, yeah. It was really to try and give people an idea of like whose road is it,
Uh-huh.
but then I look through and realize everything says DOT anyways.
So that's why I pointed it out, because those are the only 2 that I saw, even though we have other roads that are Spinard and
I think a lot of it was supposed to be previous policy committee members wanted to know like who's paying the match on things. And we were using that, but then once we got in here and actually started spelling out MOA match for SPG or state match, it kind of became a.
Tables 4 and 5 are different. They're not DOT, they're AMATS and just MOA.
Because of kind of particularly who's doing it. 4 and 5 are a little different because of who's doing the plans. Most of them are done by AMATS. Transit does a lot of the stuff in CMAC table, that kind of stuff. So we can go ahead and take a look at that and see if we have any recommended changes.
thank you.
Okay, NHS table. I just wanted to move on here. So this was updated to reflect the information provided to us by DOT. So as you can see, I'm going to do kind of a scroll through here, but anyone who has the physical copy can also look at it. Most of the projects in this table are carry forward projects from the existing TIP. We do have a few new ones, as I pointed out in the email, an additional stage for the Glen Highway Incident Management Traffic Accommodations. And we have another one for Glen Highway Milepost 1 to 34 rehab, stage 2 for this project. Parent final and stage 1 are already in the plan. So it's just an additional stage for construction in 2029. And then bringing back the project of Seward Highway, O'Malley Road to Diamond Boulevard reconstruction. So that was previously in the TIP. It did get removed at one point because there were some concerns. My memory is there's some concerns with the undercrossing at 92nd Avenue, Scooter Avenue, in that area there, of whether that undercrossing should be a vehicle focused undercrossing or an active transportation undercrossing. I think DOT is reassessing that project a little bit. There's a meeting coming up about it to talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
You want me to
yes.
been there? Or? Yeah, so we've established a stakeholder working group to just build with community members, legislators, I think. Yeah, lots of different folks. I think there's around 40 or more people. First meeting is on Monday. The goal is to obviously reassess the project, start with a brand new environmental document. We were tied to the previous environmental document, which was done back in the 2010s, early 2000s. I can't remember. Anyways, yeah, so pending what happens with that stakeholder working group over the next couple of years. So
And so the scope that you see here is the same one that was previous in the tip. It's because no work has been done right now to
We don't-
assess that scope. So we don't know what, so they're just using the existing scope.
Question about the 36th Avenue interchange project. Where does, where is that project in terms of stakeholder engagement and like potentially revising that project?
So I'm not the head of that section that's looking that forward, but I can speak some general knowledge.
Sure.
Might have to give you more information later, but the PEL was done a number of years ago. So that came forward with a number of different options from Tudor north all the way to south of 15th. And so this was identified, 36 interchange was identified as one of the projects coming out of that. As far as stakeholder engagement, when I was the project manager, we were attending monthly community council meetings for every single community council with, I think it was like 5 bordering community council meetings. We had lots of open houses and other things. Number of engagements with previous assembly members that were in that area. If we're talking about rescope or other things, I feel like we already started to go through the CSS process on that one. We may have been through the concept report. Maybe. Group planning is done. I can't remember. Alex Reed, I would like to call upon you.
Yeah, so that
well-
one we've actually, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Alex, thanks.
He's the head.
Yeah, that one's actually gone quite a ways through the CSS process. We've already done the planning and zoning meeting for the DSR as well for that one. And that was when the project was state funded. So this funding here is for federal funding, so we'll be going through the federal process, but we have already gone through all the CSS steps for
Yeah.
the project.
Sure, yeah,
I'm gonna
I
ask
think,
all of them, sorry.
yeah, I think there's some growing concern among neighbors, and we can have this conversation separately for sure. But I think there's some growing concern among neighbors on both sides of the highway about having an interchange at both Tudor and 36th. And I think it might be worth revisiting that question as to whether or not an interchange in proximity is appropriate. And I've heard some really strong preference expressed for just an overpass and no exit. So I think, yeah, would be interested to sit down and talk with you and I guess potentially Galen as well, because I think there's maybe some different priorities coming forward that would change the scope, but probably to narrow it, not expand it for once. So anyway, would really like to talk with you about that at some point.
Yeah, the team will follow up.
Great.
Said you've heard that people no exit at 36.
Yeah, there's some concern about the proximity of having a pretty significant interchange at Tudor, and then having something at 36th as well. I think there's some question about why those two things ought to happen in such tight proximity to one another. So
That's a pretty big shift.
yeah, it is. No, it's definitely a big shift, but I think I'm not sure that option was, well, yeah. Again, happy to chat more with the project team about that, but there's some growing concern among neighbors.
Okay, I recognize there are some individuals who have to leave soon. Those that have to leave, do you have any comments, questions, concerns that you want to raise about the NHS table? Yes.
I'll leave, so I'm happy to yield the floor.
I haven't seen anybody, but go ahead.
So I guess, okay, what is the timeline for the tip being adopted?
It'll come to you in October for release for public comment. That public comment will happen in January and February, and then final approval in March, unless we have significant changes, and then it could be April or May.
And so before this goes out to public comment, are we gonna be making changes potentially?
That would be in October's meeting, is we're gonna bring it to you all and say, oh, do you want to shift this around? Do you want to change this? Do you want to add this? Do you want to finalize what you want for the pavement replacement table?
Well, I think while we are on the NHS table, I guess my question is, what is AMATS gonna put out to the public comment for public comment if there's not, let's say there's a project on this table that the majority of the policy committee does not support, to go out for public comment. Because it kind of gets to the question that we had at that previous work session, who has authority over this table and the project descriptions and the timing, funding.
So the policy committee does. The policy committee controls the tip, period, end of story.
Okay.
So whatever the policy committee votes on at their October meeting is what staff will put out for the public to see.
Okay.
Great. It's, yeah, to adjust that. And I'll remind everybody, as Christine was reminding me, the timeline for the tip is different online. That's because we just changed it based on feedback at the last work session. So that's why it's kind of a draft timeline always, because it's iterative, and there was some comments at the last thing about maybe making some changes to projects. So we want to give the committee members that opportunity before we do the interagency consultation process. Brad?
So the sewage, highway Amata Diamond, like, schedule, funding schedule, I guess, aligns with the working group that's about to start up that found discussion. Is that the case? Is it?
I mean, it's all a placeholder until we know what project we're constructing. I mean, ultimately, and I'm gonna say the same thing to the stakeholder working group. After spending $14 million federal funds, FHWA is gonna seek for us to construct something. And there's a lot of things that we can all agree on that section of highway. Braden Drive's not great, right? Like, we had a fatality. There's some pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements at the interchange at Diamond, where we had another fatality and a lot of other injuries, right? Like, there's things that we can construct along. There's a gap on Homer Drive where, we don't have a sidewalk because it pushed it to this project because we didn't have a right of way action. There's a lot of things that we can agree on. Until I know what it is we're constructing, if it's a grade separated crossing at Scooter and Academy, or if it's just a pedestrian undercrossing, that's a football field long and a big dark hole. If that's what everybody, comes together and that's what they want, then, ultimately DOT is the decision maker on yay or nay on something, on whether or not we would include something on the project. We can have discussions amongst the policy committee and AMATS and all of that stuff, but there's something that we can build there. I don't know what it is yet. I've got my first meeting on Monday with a really, really large group from the community. And so hopefully we can all agree on something.
So I'm on that invite in that group. As I look at the different invitees, it includes like state senators and representatives and some.
And assembly
Some people.
and
It was
Mike
like,
Anchorage.
it was kind of a strange conglomerate of
It's a,
who it has and who it doesn't have. And I guess thinking about the policy committee making the funding decisions, like how does this working group like interact with the project and provide recommendations, and how do those decisions get made, and how is that clear so the policy committee can know like if it's comfortable funding something for it?
well, as part of the process for the project, we will be going to AMATS. That is definitely one of the outreach points, but the path to move forward right now has been identified to work with that stakeholder working group, which is, and build consensus, right? And it involves a lot of people with, some opposing viewpoints, and hopefully we can all come together and find some common out. It will have to go back through the CSS process because it is not the same project that we presented in front of planning and zoning. It will be a long drawn out process. I can't tell you what the project is today to put in that description.
$32 million.
And
That dollar amount is definitely incorrect because I don't know what we're building. But DOT is the one that's using NHPP funding, which is not AMATS funding. And so until I get approval from, the people that develop the STIP, that's a placeholder.
Well, I will mention something. I hope you're not serious in saying that that amount is incorrect, because now that calls into question fiscal constraint. So let's be clear here that that's your best guess of what it's going to cost the project at this time.
That is a planning level estimate.
Okay,
And as all planning level estimates are prone to be plus or minus
so
50%.
it's our best guess, so we can assume you're still fiscally constrained.
Yeah, I was teasing.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to make that very clear for everybody who's listening.
It's as good as we got.
As a basis, right?
so, but we are in essence being asked to approve a placeholder.
Mhm.
And what is the rationale for bringing this particular project back to the table?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's because they're seeking federal funding for it now. And so it needs to be into the tip in order to receive that federal funding.
We've got design funding and we've certainly acquired a lot of right of way. So I don't know that we're gonna need any more right of way, but we will need construction funding at some point in time. It needs to be in the tip at some point in time.
I think what Sean said earlier, we have a design that's on the shelf. Some of those things are, not agreed upon, I guess, but some of those things everybody can agree upon, so.
Yeah, I guess maybe a bit different way of asking the question would be, how did this particular project get prioritized over other potential NHS projects?
We have a design on the shelf that we spent $14 million on.
Well, and so I've got an ongoing project. FHWA does not want projects sitting on the shelf. You have to show that you're advancing projects.
Sure, yeah, I guess I'm curious. Well, I have two thoughts. One of those thoughts is, I mean, again, like prioritizing something based on the fact that you had something on the shelf in a fiscally constrained environment, when there are potentially other more salient projects on the NHS system that meet local goals, that address more salient safety concerns, et cetera. I guess I would like to understand why this particular project, because of, I suppose I'm not compelled by the idea that just because we had one set of plans that is going to change entirely because there's going to be a new scope and a working group is just convening. Like that doesn't feel like a compelling reason to bring forward a $32 million project when there's other things that the NHS funding could potentially be addressing. That's my first thought. And then my second thought is there's a variety of projects that have associated sunk costs that we're also talking about pausing. So Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's some incongruence, and I just would like to understand the prioritization matrix.
So, yeah, so it sounds like we're talking about prioritization. So what other projects have sunk costs that are paused?
Well, I mean, we have, when you flip back to the HSIP projects, we have 3 projects that are essentially in limbo that all have sunk costs associated with them.
They do not, they haven't started.
Well, their project phasing is the same.
I don't have design starts on them.
Does the MTP prioritize projects?
Yes,
Is this prioritized on the MTP?
yes.
Are there other projects that have not been programmed that are prioritized higher in the MTP?
So here's a different question. Like, what's the pot of money that this is from? Like, what's it compete?
All projects throughout the state on the national highway system.
So this isn't Anchorage specific, this is statewide.
Which I think raises the bar even higher to say, why this project now?
So what are the implications if this project was removed from the tip?
So ultimately, if the project is not advanced in the stiff tip, then likely, I don't know, we'd have to run through that scenario. We have spent $14 million. We would probably
Well, FHA.
go back to FHWA and ask for reimbursement, which they may or may not, and then we'd be stuck with a $14 million bill.
Well, I'm not saying I'm particularly opposed to this project. I just want to understand why this project is being prioritized over any number of other projects on the NHS. That's really my question.
Is it a matter of, I mean, you can't just like create new projects out of, you have to work up to them.
Sure.
And so is it the fact that, I mean, like any house project, hopefully you don't start a remodel on one part of the house when you haven't finished it on the other part of the house, because that's just.
But this is saying if we did the blueprints, then we have to build the house.
Except I think this is saying that we need to do something. We've already torn down this wall. Maybe we're not gonna put it back the same way, but we gotta do something. Because we're like,
If anything starts design, we have to just.
not that you have to. I mean, there are some that
I mean,
feel like it's still a need.
yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering about is like, what is going to take a backseat, or what are other potentially more salient, more urgent, more ultimately productive projects? I mean, because by saying yes to this, we're necessarily saying no to something else, even if it's not in Anchorage, even if it's someplace else. This is still $32 million that we're saying we think we're going to spend on this project. And I would like to understand why this project is being brought forward to the exclusion of other projects, because I don't have a catalog of what else might have been prioritized above this elsewhere.
Did you see where it fell in the MPP?
Well, there's the problem. In the MTP, it's listed as a TIP project because it was in the TIP at the point that we did the MTP. So it doesn't really have a scoring and ranking because it was already in the TIP at that point. So in essence, it was one of the highest scoring projects because it was in the TIP.
Because
but
it's
didn't
already
really get it.
there.
Yeah, it didn't. So it's not in the normal ranking with everything else.
I think some of what your thought process here is based on how the STIP is programmed. And because this is NHS, could be anywhere on the NHS throughout the state. And so as we program the STIP, so goes, projects that end up on this table. There is some back and forth between how it flows from the TIP to the STIP and vice versa. So why this project and not one, say, on the Glen Highway north of Sutton? I don't think that's something that we are prepared to be able to answer here. But I think that's a STIP management question. Maybe.
It's on it. Is there another project that you think has more value?
Well,
We do have a fatality, at least one, maybe two.
well, I mean, there are other roads that are technically part of the NHS, so that are part of NHS that have way more fatalities that are not here. So I don't know that I'm not trying to assert that I have a particular project in mind. I mean, I do think that if we are going to take seriously our local guidance, which says that every transportation project should be treated as a safety project, then I would posit that there are other NHS roads in Anchorage that if we took strictly the safety concerns and the number of fatalities would rank much higher than this particular section of the Seward Highway. And so I think that's why I'm kind of pressing this issue is how we prioritize $32 million or more when we have a fiscally constrained environment. I mean, that feels like a really important question to be able to answer. Because ultimately, like we are stewarding a whole lot of taxpayer money. And I just want to be sure that it passes the red face test.
Your basic question is, why this, not that?
Why this, not something else? And I hear, okay, well, we had some blueprints on the shelf and we're going to pull them out and dust them off and potentially rescope the whole thing. But that's still asking us to commit $32 million that could go elsewhere. Not that this project would never be picked up again in the future, but that we might have other priorities that could leverage this funding. And, you know, does FHWA care if we come back in a decade and say, hey, we're going to pick up that project that we sunk $14 million into because we've taken care of more pressing needs in the meantime. And now we have this like thing that we can do that is risen to the level of being a priority again.
I think the problem with this project is they've purchased right away with federal funds.
Gives us 20 years from order to proceed, right? So, I mean, there is time on there, but I guess I'd ask the same question about Tudor or any of those projects on the list. Why is that project?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is part of the question is why don't we have something from our high crash network? I mean, we don't have to just restrict our use of AMATS funds for safety projects to the HSIP. I mean, I think we have other roads on the NHS system that probably merit investment. Why not that?
Michael,
AMATS funds.
so yeah, a couple things. These aren't AMATS funds. These are the state funds, the NHS funds that they determine. So it's a little different there, but it does bring up the question, or it's something that has to be recognized. Projects take a really long time from start to finish. And multiple policy committees change between projects start and finish. And so back in the day, this one was a priority to be in the tip. So they started it, they spent money on it. They said the feds were committed to getting this project done. And now things have changed because the approach has changed. Fatalities have shifted. The traffic has shifted.
Land use changes.
Yep.
Sure. So
So for me, it just kind of feels like we're beating a dead horse with this one. Like we've already talked a lot about this project. I brought the traffic demand counts from DOT's own website to previous policy committee meeting. We talked about how what was predicted many years ago, the opposite has happened in terms of traffic demand, in terms of population growth projections. We've heard from community council folks that they no longer support this. And so it just, I mean, I guess I, in this seat, just can't, I can appreciate that the majority of projects that we say, yep, we're going to commit to, we're going to see them through to fruition, even if design elements change along the way. But I can't concede that just because we have a design that over a period of decades, we are going to complete a project. We have to be able to be responsive to conditions.
I don't know that we have to add capacity with this project. So, I mean, the scope right there includes improvements to the interchange. I don't know if we need to do that. Way back to what Sean was saying, that there are things in this project that everybody can agree on. I think that's the goal. And I've got a snow dome.
So why are we back up to $50 million?
I would say ultimately, this project will have a stakeholders meeting on Monday. It has funding to continue to work through public process, public participation, design. This construction, utility construction in 29, I mean, it's not necessarily relevant for the project to grow, to continue to develop in the here and now. So while, you know, we are concerned about what it's going to look like at the end, this is still 29. This isn't this fiscal year. We're looking to put $50 million on this.
I mean, part of my big concern is we don't know what the scope is ultimately going to be, and we don't know what the cost is ultimately going to be. It seems like it's premature to put it into the tip right now. Because now that I've heard this conversation, I'm concerned about fiscal constraint. We don't actually know what the cost of the project is. How do you know you're fiscally constrained? Yeah, the money will be there. Well, you guys don't know that because administrations change.
I mean, as of right now, in our internal documents, the money is sitting there.
But your STIP doesn't,
I know.
It's the 27th.
yeah, the STIP is a little different at this point. So
I mean, with that in mind, then there's no guarantees that any projects that are beyond this STIP that aren't shown in any of
It's
these
true.
documents, we couldn't advance, right?
but are you doing full scope changes on other projects potentially?
I don't,
There-
okay.
there were 36 maybe, which.
Well, I mean, you haven't started that, so I can't speak on that one.
We could get that.
So on this one, I remember a policy committee discussion that set a dollar amount. That like, was it in the MTP where it changed something? Do you remember?
It was 30 million.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's,
I remembered it. Yeah. That's what I
But that's even worse because it had no basis, you know, it's chopped.
So it dropped it from like 110 million to like 40 million. What my recollection is, which.
We had a presentation from someone at DOT, and those are the numbers that she put out there.
Yeah, and I think those were the grade, yeah, she just retired 2 weeks ago, so, Christina Hubert.
Oh.
But just a grade separated pathway, either overcrossing or, you know, a tunnel underneath the highway is tens of millions of dollars because at highway speeds, you've got to either, if you're going with a tunnel underneath, that's a football length long, then, you know, you got to raise the highway. I can't remember what the numbers were, but it's like 15 feet, which carries you thousands of feet either way. And if you go over, then you got a football length long pathway that's 3 stories in the air, right? These are all things that we can work out with the stakeholder working group about what the vision might be for alternatives, and then go back out to the public and go to the CSS process and work through some of those things. I think that dollar amount probably reflects the things that everybody is likely to agree on.
So, okay, I feel like I'm hearing two different messaging. You know, one is we have a design on the shelf. The other is we're going back to the drawing board. And so I guess my question is it possible to make this project illustrative? And you guys can go back to the drawing board, do your advisory panel, do this new public process that you're going to do to potentially significantly change the scope of the project and come up with consensus. So can we give you the opportunity to do that, convene that process by making this project illustrative?
Is having it in 29 illustrative?
No.
30.
no. If it's within the 4 years, 27, 28, or 29 or 30, it's not illustrative. So it'd be 31 or later.
So whether it's illustrative, whether it's programmed into this tip or not, we're still going to do what you just said. We have design funding, right? I mean.
But the policy committee is not going to necessarily do whatever DOT wants.
Correct.
So you guys can do that, and we can signal our support for you doing that process by making it illustrative in year 31. And I think that might be a nice compromise to move this project forward. And then if you do come back with like this, you can demonstrate, yeah, we had a lot of consensus with this advisory panel. We shopped it back out to the community councils. We got some good support. We can demonstrate support for these elements that we want to move forward with. And then maybe we can say, okay, yeah, let's amend it. people are on board, we can move this forward in time. Or not have a majority of the policy committee potentially saying delete the project.
I'm having a hard time understanding why it's any different than any other of these projects on the list, but. I don't know if I would, 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left.
I think it's different because it's unclear, at least for me anyway, the prioritization of this project over other potential projects is unclear. And that feels like if we can't give a clear rationale for why this project is being prioritized over other more pressing needs on the NHS, I have a hard time earmarking 32 million for it. I think that's my
I'd say
contention.
the same thing for Tudor Road. I mean, it's the same dollar figure almost.
It is, but Tudor Road has significant safety issues and a slew of pedestrian deaths,
At the interchange.
bicycle safety issues. Like, yeah, have you been on that sidewalk? It's like this wide. No, I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, that makes great sense to me, not to mention the fact that a semi ran into it last month. So, but again, like, prioritizing the things that our community actually needs versus what has existed on a list in the past. I just think we can do better. I think we can be more thoughtful with taxpayer funding. That's my general feeling.
I think this kind of gets to what the policy committees have said in the past, that we just get handed a list from DOT and says, here you go, with no real explanation for it. So it might be beneficial if DOT is able to provide some information about scoring and ranking or other things like that on these projects. Maybe that can help with some of the conversation, because that's what it sounds like Aaron is saying. How did this score compared to other projects that you guys did? We're not involved in the NHS scoring in any way. And as far as I know, that hasn't been made public. So I don't know. I can't answer that as staff. Yes, Melinda.
I'll just say I know very little about the project, but as far as being on the tech, I've seen a lot of comments come through about the project and some opposition and lots of controversy, and the fact that they're, moving forward to relook at it, that makes it a bit different than some of the other ones. I'm not sure that I've seen as much comments come through on all the projects that I'm aware of. Yes, we always receive comments, but in this one in particular, I've seen more comments, and I'll just leave it at that.
We've passed assembly resolutions on it too. I mean, this one has a history of discussion on its policy.
Okay, we do have a few minutes left, so get your questions in. Melinda, yes.
I think I have probably an easy question, and I'm just trying to refresh on the Abbott Road pavement preservation project, because I think, is that the same segment that DOT has in design now, and this is construction funds, or is it segmented into two segments? So I'm trying to look at the different amounts that I'm seeing here. Because it's actually interesting, $27 million. I'm like, wow, that's lots of pavement project.
Oh, this is. It happened in 29.
I have that same question.
I think it's a duplication, 2930.
It's kind of
Now
like,
that I look at that, thank you for pointing it out.
okay,
Because I'll have to go back and relook at that and correct it, because yeah, I should have doing the AC there for it. So it might have been a duplication. I'll go
okay,
back.
and that's why I thought,
Thank
like,
you.
gosh, that's why.
Yeah, no, it's,
No wonder
I think the.
we're all struggling.
Seriously,
Is around.
it's supposed to be zeroed out.
Okay,
So in 27 through 30?
Yeah, so for the
Oh.
Abbott Road pavement preservation, what I did is I copied and pasted.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think I cleared out the 29 and 30 years.
Okay.
Because as you see, it's UC, so utilities construction in 27, and then they're ACing or ACC, so they're paying back some AC on there.
Okay.
This probably should be zeroed out right here. So I'll go back and reconfirm that. That's why we love you guys reviewing this and catching my mistakes. So thank you.
okay. I knew it.
Good catch.
27 million for pavement preservation. No wonder we need.
I know. Wow.
I mean, resurfacing Minnesota cost us 15 just for that second section, and if you include all of it, it's 30 plus.
Yeah, start adding in the drainage problems throughout our community and everything, it skyrockets the cost. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Real briefly as well, we have updated some of the transit table. We're still waiting for the railroad. I think hopefully we'll get it to us soon. And then we also updated table 10. I sent Melinda an email. I apologize, it was very last minute, but a couple of these two projects I'll need your help to update for the University Drive and the SS4A for the Cross Street.
I will.
Updating them to what the 27 through 29.
I'll get.
Oh,
on that.
okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So those are there if you guys have any questions on them. Any other final questions? Okay, so expect to see this in October for action, to release it for public comment.